Hello, everyone. Welcome to and or back to the Jet Reel podcast. I am your host, Jill Therese. And this week's episode, I am continuing our little train that we've got here because I don't think I can stop at this point of answering your questions. I have received so many incredible questions from you guys that I really think that I can be of help in answering. So that is what I'm going to do today's episode. But I also want to encourage you guys to look out later in this week. I'm going to try really, really hard because I don't think I can get to everybody's question in this episode because I am kind of strapped for time here. But I do want to get to all of those questions, so there may be a bonus episode this week, so keep your eye out. Follow the Jet Reel Podcast Instagram account and Facebook page. I'll post updates if there's a new episode, and just keep an eye out. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you'll get notifications or you'll see it pop up in your feed. Now that all of that boringness is out of the way, please, let's just get into it. Listen, that's where I was going with the please. Please listen. Dear God, please listen. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Alrighty, everyone, here we go. Let's get into this content. Also, please do note, I'm going to try really hard this week to make that follow-up episode, and if you would like your question to be featured in an episode, you can write me at jetreelpodcast@gmail.com. You can also DM the Jet Reel Podcast Instagram, but I'm not fantastic about checking those DMs. I'm going to try for the episode this week if I am not already overloaded with questions, but I might have to upgrade the podcast to doing 2 a week. We'll see. I don't know. I don't want it to get like too lost in the feed for everybody where there are too many episodes, but I'm going to try. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in as well. But without further ado, oops, bumped the mic, sorry. Okay, without further ado, now let's answer some questions. So, anonymous listener 1 asks, my trainer uses negative reinforcement or positive punishment. Not really sure what the difference is. So first, I'm going to butt in here and answer that. If you guys are at a loss or a little bit confused at all regarding, the different types of reinforcements that fall under the operant conditioning quadrants. I have a bunch of earlier episodes when this podcast used to be Equine in Theory that I talk about all of it. There are tons of resources, blogs, stuff on my website, JETEquiTheory.com that you can check out that explain that. But quickly, negative reinforcement is the removal of a negative stimulus or a negative means removal, reinforcement means to increase. So you're removing something that the animal doesn't like to increase that behavior. Positive punishment, on the other hand, is when you're adding something that the animal doesn't like to decrease behavior. So an example of negative reinforcement is when the horse stops, you release pulling on the rein. Positive punishment would be when the horse refuses a jump, you swat him with a whip. So the goal of one is to stop the horse, and a goal of another is to stop the horse from refusing. So not necessarily my favorite method ever, but I do use negative reinforcement here and there in my training. But I'm new to this relatively-ish. It's been like 2 years, and I really haven't done a whole lot of ridden work, so my opinion on that is still likely to fluctuate a bit, but for now, that is where I stand. Furthering the email, I ride this horse who tries so hard, but in his stall he is really mean and pushy. Even just stepping into a stall, he tries to nip you and pins his ears. When I first brush, he kicks out, so to eliminate the possible fly irritation, I put fly spray on him to make sure it isn't the flies. When I proceed to brush him, he's just kind of tense and pins his ears. Every once in a while, I have to tap his face to get it away from me, as he often gets in my space too much and tries to bite me. I don't cross-tie him, I tack and groom in his stall. I always feel a little bit of guilt, as I don't know if it is just his attitude and lack of respect, dominance in his stall, or it is pain. I don't have a problem with tapping my horse to give him a warning and stuff, but I want to make sure it is for a good reason. If it is a behavior that I don't mind, and I will work with the time I have with him to try and fix it. If it is pain, I don't want to hit him if he is hurting. I can't always tell. Okay, so that's not all the email, but I think it's important to kind of tackle this where it is, and then I'll continue reading it. So good first step, eliminating the possibility of flies. That's why it could be a very logical reason as to why he's kicking out and seems irritated. But if he is displaying these behaviors just from you entering his stall, it could be for a number of reasons, and I'll try to list some of the possibles. So it could include that he's used to people entering his stall where he is in a confined space and he can't get away, and somebody has hurt him in that environment, so he's wary of being in an environment where he can't readily get away, or he doesn't really have an escape, and he's worried about that, and he feels like he needs to defend himself because if we look at how horses respond to threats, they're primarily flight animals, so they're going to run. But if they're in a place where they can't run, the second option is to fight. So he could be trying to defend himself, express discomfort, that sort of thing. So in that scenario, I would say that it would be vital to spend some time with him outside of his stall, where you are separated from him. He knows that you cannot hurt him at all, and you know that he can't hurt you at all. So, obviously you're not going to be able to do this when you have a lesson pressing and you've only got 30 minutes to get tacked up. But, just spend some time with him outside a stall without an agenda, if you can, and maybe cut back on lessons or something like that, and just spend time with him outside a stall to where he gets comfortable with the idea of somebody being near him in a stall. And then maybe you can crack his door open and stand in the doorway, and all the while monitoring, making sure that he is not uncomfortable or expressing those distance increasing signals, like pinning his ears or nipping. Those are distance increasing signals. They are telling you to get away. So in that scenario, I would say just try to work up to making it a really good experience. So some things you could do would be to maybe incorporate some positive reinforcement. You could target train him, and you could start in protected contact. So you're outside the stall, the horse is inside the stall, and you're making your presence around a stall a very good thing. So he gets to do something, take his mind off his worry perhaps, and you could do target training and just have him learn how to touch a target, and it's every time he looks at it or he gets close to it or he touches it, he gets a treat until you eventually work up the criteria to he must touch it, to get a treat. But that tends to come pretty quickly for most horses. But yeah, so that would make you a really positive, entity, thing, stimulus near his stall. And then you can work on rebuilding the relationship inside his stall. So usually horses react this way if the rider is a predictor of something. So another possible reason that he could be acting this way is not because he's been injured in a stall. I mean, obviously both could be true, or one could be true, or the other's true. But another reason that he might be acting like this is because a rider is predicting something he doesn't like. So it's possible that maybe his SI is out, or he has one of his bones in his neck is out. Maybe he has a rib out, or maybe he has kissing spine, or maybe he has hock problems, or maybe his feet hurt. Any number of issues could be prevalent. Maybe he has ulcers and brushing hurts. And when you enter his stall, you're a predictor that he's going to get brushed, and his skin is really sensitive. So things like that are really important to consider, because it's not just a matter of the horse is being dominant, or he's trying to assert his dominance in the stall. I don't really prescribe to that theory, mostly because it has been largely disproven in studies. And the theory that horses need to be dominated and need to respect humans is largely an agenda pushed by natural horsemanship trainers. And it's a fine stance, but it does often perpetuate the idea that we can be super harsh with our animals, or you can even you can cross into abuse very quickly with that. I myself have in the past, and it's not a place you want to be. So if you have the mindset that your horse is trying to dominate you and you need to correct that, then that lends itself a lot more to being violent with the animals, rather than if you see it as the horse is trying to communicate something to you. You're a lot more apt to, instead of just going straight to, knocking them in the face, to instead be like, okay, why is this horse acting like this? So I totally understand what you're saying. Like, obviously you don't want to get bitten. And if you're in the stall with a horse and he's biting at you, you have to do what you can to protect yourself. But that's not a training scenario. That is an emergency situation. It's a situation where you're trying to protect yourself. It's not a situation where you're trying to train the animal. I know people will scream from the rooftops that punching their horse in the face has taught it not to bite. But I encourage you to consider not doing that, because what you're telling the animal is that mean of communication is not working. And sometimes that can lead horses to do one of two things. They either get louder, where they actually bite you, or they start kicking or rearing up, something more violent, or they shut down and they just succumb to the pain and let you do what you will with them, and that's called learned helplessness, where they just kind of like stop communicating altogether, and that's not what you want. This is a horse that's trying to tell you, I have an issue with this, and you are listening, and I respect you so much for that, listener. There are so many people that would just be like, oh, well, he's being bad, he's trying to dominate me, but you're questioning that, and I commend you for that. It's not easy to do. So I understand you don't have a problem with tapping him as a warning or trying to make sure he's not dominating you, but I don't think that's what's happening. That's not what I believe anymore. Trust me, I had a horse growing up that was just like this, and I wish I had known different. And he was like that with the girth too. He would just be so violent, and eventually I just stopped hitting him because nothing changed. And I didn't know anything about ulcer treatment or making sure that the saddles fit or anything like that. And I also didn't know about trying to retrain a positive association. So if his saddle or if his girth hurt, then if we did rule out the pain, because we tried ulcer treatments and stuff with him and put him on omeprazole and stuff like that, but I never tried to make the saddle a good thing ever again. I just kept putting it on hoping that he would stop. So back to what I was saying. 2 reasons that could be happening are because A, he feels unsafe in his stall, he feels like he's going to get hurt and that he needs to defend himself, or because you're predicting something uncomfortable. Like I said, it could be you're a predictor, like your presence is a predictor that he's going to get ridden and it's uncomfortable, maybe something hurts and it's like maybe the saddle's pinching him or he's got a problem. The brushing could be, a symptom of that as well, that like brushing and all the preparatory stages before you get on are signals that he's going to get ridden. Those could be the things that are triggering this reaction. Or the likely cause, if he's kicking out and pinning his ears when you're brushing him, Zoe used to do this too. She would kick out, pin her ears, pull her nostrils back, stomp her feet, and turn around, try to bite me. She did all of those things because she had ulcers, pretty severe ulcers, and we treated them. And then I don't know why my voice is so shaky right now, but it's annoying. I hope you can't hear that. Anyway, we worked up to a point where I could scratch her and then give her a treat. Then I worked up, or pet her and then scratch her, and then worked up to using a brush, and then I would treat her the whole time. And I know that sounds really tedious, especially for people who aren't used to using a lot of treats, but it really helped her create a positive association that brushing isn't going to hurt anymore. It's a good thing. You're getting treats for standing here, and then as it becomes a positive thing, because she knows she's going to get treats for it, that allows her to see that maybe it's not hurting anymore. It's not going to predict hurt. Some horses, if you treat the ulcers and really rule out all that pain, then when you start brushing, they'll gradually learn, oh, it's not going to hurt, and then those behaviors will go away. But there's still going to be a little bit residual. There's going to be some overlap after the treatment, so don't expect to see like immediate results. But sensitivity to brushing, my voice is so bad right now, I'm so sorry, but a sensitivity to brushing and aggression around that is usually a big indicator of ulcers. And I encourage you to seriously look into ulcer treatment. There's even a video, DePaulo Equine Concepts. You can look it up on YouTube, how to check for ulcers, how to palpate your horse for ulcers, and you can touch the horse in these acupressure points, and it will tell you if your horse is positive for ulcers or not. And then you can scope if you want to, or you can just go ahead and treat it, which is what we did with Zoe because it was cheaper. But then you'll know if the horse has ulcers, like, immediately. But I highly, highly encourage you to check for that, because if it is a perpetuating problem, you might actually end up with the issue that Zoe had, where she colicked and almost died. So not to like fear you into doing anything, but it is something to consider. Okay, continuing the email. When he has hay, he is fine as long as you don't nag him. I know he gets 2 flakes of Timothy alfalfa, but he eats on the quicker side. IDK if it is ulcers, as he tends to be quite sensitive in the back when I put the saddle on. He will pin his ears and try to bite me. I would seriously look into it. Also, another thing that I have recently learned, it's very common for horses to have kissing spine. I had no idea that it was so prevalent until I started looking into it, because Zoe had it. So that is something else to think about. Most modern horses are ridden incorrectly and inverted. I thought I was riding Zoe working over her back. I was not. She has kissing spine. So he could be experiencing some back pain, some ulcer pain. Continuing here. I try to accommodate this by putting the girth on the first hole till I go to mount up, but once I put his bridle on, a switch flips, and he is the most carefree horse in the world. He couldn't care less if I go to tighten the girth before I get on. And the other most confusing thing of all is once I get off, after a lesson, he is a completely different horse. He is Mr. Happy and bright eyes. He will let you hold him and pet him. Once he nipped my dad before a lesson, as my dad tried to bite him. Or pet him. Okay, so, unfortunate, your dad got bit. That is not something we like. Biting or getting bit does not feel great. I'm speaking from experience. But, okay, so this is also a very common thing. Zoe and Bo were both like this, many horses that I have ridden, because here's the deal. If they're experiencing pain while you're riding them, you entering their stall is a predictor that they're going to get ridden. But after you're done riding, you're no longer a predictor for something that's going to hurt, or something that's unpleasant for them, or something that is asking too much of them. So, just be aware that after the ride, you're no longer a sign that like, hey, this is going to happen. It's over. And horses are inherently peaceful creatures. They want to be loved. They want to be engaged with us. And we've bred them for many years to be domesticated and interacting with humans. So there is an inherent connection there. But what gets in the way is pain and fear. So usually my philosophy, at least, is if a horse is acting aggressively, it is because he is either afraid, or he is in pain, or he's just uneducated. Because a lot of horses, what behavior gets labeled as rude or aggressive is actually just the horse just doesn't know any better. It's never been taught this is how you should behave, not out of being beaten into it, but being rewarded for doing the right thing. There's not enough of that in this industry. I stand by that. But so like you said, once you put a bridle on, the switch flips, because potentially the brushing or the saddling part is the painful part. He doesn't have a problem with the bridling. And by then, he knows it's going to happen. That's exactly how Bo and Zoe were. And I would just really encourage you to not write it off as a non-issue, because he is fine when you're riding. But there's so much pressure and force that goes into riding. And I'm not trying to dog you, listener. I promise. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I'm not trying to dog you. I swear. I have been there. I have done that. I have done all of these things and worse. But I don't know. It's just something to consider. I really encourage you not to just write it off as like, oh, he's fine after. And it doesn't sound like you're doing that anyway. But I can understand how it is confusing for sure. Okay. The last part of this email says, I am just confused about his mood swings before the ride after. The last time I was at a barn and started to see if I could try to work with his manners using clicker training, he picked up really quickly at targeting, so he understands clicker. So great. I hope I can teach him some manners, but there isn't much I can do because he isn't my horse. Totally understandable. I am only able to afford lessons once a week, and he has many different riders throughout the week. But if I can make myself more positive for him before I ride, I think that would be great. So yeah, like I said earlier, you can maybe try and get to your lesson earlier and work with him and do some things like that. Just become a really positive experience in his life, and maybe really show your trainer the palpating video and be like, I really want to try this with this horse, and let's see if he has ulcers or if he has some sort of back pain, because he's been telling me these symptoms, and I don't think that it's because he's like trying to override my dominance or something, but it's because he's got a problem with something that's to come, and because he's totally fine in every other regard. It's just brushing and tacking up and my initial presence in the stall. That's really something to talk to them about. I know those conversations can be really hard to have, but hopefully you have an understanding of trainer that is willing to help her ponies. Okay, that was 20 minutes. On to question number 2. This one's a bit shorter. Okay, anonymous listener writes, I have been falling off a lot recently when riding, mainly due to spooks or losing my stirrups and not balance when I am riding. I was wondering if you have any tips on how to stay on when an unbalanced horse spooks. This week I was having a basic lesson and the horse was trotting and I was riding, but the horse got very spooked by a waving tarp and some loud thunder, as there was a thunderstorm the night before. Because I was writing English, it was much easier for me to slip off. I completely disagree. I think it's way easier to fall off in Western, but I understand that Western saddles are bigger and you have more to grab onto, but I feel so much more imbalanced in Western. But it's easier for me to slip off. She galloped away and I fell in between her and the wall, and luckily I walked away just fine. That's scary. I was mostly really embarrassed and down on myself because I've been riding for 4+ years and still have trouble with balance and form. Do you have any tips on how I can stay safely on a horse spooks? Okay, so this question is a bit of a tricky one because it's really hard for me to know what your riding looks like, and equitation plays a huge role in that. So usually when this is occurring and you've been riding as long as you have, which is no problem, sometimes it's just a simple minor fix. A lot of the time when we're still falling off, it's because your lower leg strength and your core strength isn't where it needs to be. So that could be because there's a reliance on your rein. It's really hard to stay on a horse when you're riding entirely off your hand. So something that maybe you could ask your trainer about is to try like a lunge line lesson, and to where you don't have reins and you are forced to ride off of your leg and your body, and it'll really help illuminate where your balance has been. And then you'll be able to be like, oh, okay, this is what it feels like. This is where I need to be, and you can work towards that. Also doing at-home core exercises, make sure they're right and you're not going to hurt yourself. But doing ab exercises and working on strengthening your core. Another thing to do is like find some stairs in your house and do heel raises. That'll strengthen your calf. Do some squats and see if you can hold it. Do some like up, down, hold for like, I don't know, 30 seconds, come back up, that sort of thing. You might have to work up to it, but really establishing your strength will help tremendously because, whether you believe it or not, the belief has been perpetuated that horses do all the work, and that's not the case. We have to be athletes for our animals. You can't just expect to get on and ride, and you know that better than anyone because it's difficult. So really try and work on your strength. If you can build up a strong core and leg strength, then you won't need your hands at all, and you'll be able to ride off your body, and that's the goal. But you're going to have to get on a regiment to make sure that you're doing that. Another thing is balance comes easier to others, or to some than others. I'm one of those people. Balance was very hard for me growing up too. I used to fall off all the time. As I've gotten older, try not to do that as much because my body hurts all the time. But I used to fall off all the time because I was super unbalanced, and I still am walking. But that's something that it just takes time, but you can only develop your balance if you're not relying on something else. If you're relying on your hand and your rein, the horse's mouth, to keep your balance, then you're going to fall off every time because the horse's mouth is subject to change. But if you're in tune with the horse's body and you're connected where you're able to move with the horse, then you'll be less likely to fall off. Spooking is unfortunate, but it does happen. But you just have to be strong enough in your core to kind of counteract that lack of balance. Another thing that could be happening, for years I rode in a saddle that tipped me forward in dressage. So now I have to deal with the fact that when I ride on the flat, I tip forward too far because my saddle tipped me forward, and I learned to ride like that, but I was always having to fight the saddle, and it really put me at a disadvantage in flat work. So consider that maybe the lesson saddle doesn't totally fit you or the horse super well, and maybe that's a problem you and your trainer could look into together and seeing if you could fix that. Maybe your stirrups need to go up or down a hole. I know for me, I like to have my stirrups up a hole, especially when I'm on like, I don't know, maybe I like to have them down. I think on younger horses, I might like to have them down, so I feel like I'm got a good wrap around the horse, but sometimes that can work against you if they're too low, because then you can't get out of the saddle and you're kind of like stuck in this one long-legged position. But also if your stirrups are too short, it could be tipping you forward and pushing you too far out of the saddle in inappropriate circumstances. Okay, so continuing, my second question is, how do I keep a steady horse on the low? A speedy horse on the low. My trainer says to keep my energy calm and relaxed, and told me that I need to lean forward in the trot because I have a lack of balance and a bad seat. Ouch. Jeez. I wouldn't be upset if my trainer told me that. Okay. I have trouble keeping her collected because of this, and I was wondering if you had tips on how I can expand my comfort zone even when I'm nervous. I try to keep my body soft and at the same time stand tall in the saddle, but whenever I go into a trot, I lean forward at the post, which makes me unable to move into a sitting trot to slow her down, which just kind of ruins it overall. I don't have problems with this in the walk or canter, just at the trot. Okay, so this is kind of a tricky question to answer because there's a lot to unpack. But so for me, I have ridden a lot of young off-the-track thoroughbreds, and some of them have one gear at the trot and others have 18. Zoe is one of them. When you get on her, she gets faster and faster and faster and faster, and she falls on her forehand a lot. So you're saying that your trainer is telling you to lean forward because you have a lack of balance and a bad seat. That's understandable, but you also have to realize that you're putting your weight onto the horse's shoulders, which is encouraging them to get lower and lower and lower and get falling on the forehand because there's more weight up there. Horses already have 60% of their body weight up front. So it's our job to help them lift the front end so that they can keep a balanced pace. Because if they're falling on their forehand, they're just going to run faster and faster. Otherwise, they're going to fall on their faces. So what you need to do, what I would say if I were your trainer, but I mean, obviously I can't like totally coach you here because I haven't seen it and I can only go off of what you're saying. But she's absolutely right that you need to keep your energy calm and relaxed. You need to make sure that you're breathing and you're not just getting locked, because what can happen really easily is if your horse is trotting and you get a little nervous, you lock up in your arm and you lock up on the rein and the horse is pulling against you, and then the rest of your body goes rigid. And then if the horse spooks because she can sense your nervousness, and maybe it's like she's like, oh, you're nervous? Well, where's the storm? What's happening? Where's the cougar, the mountain lion? Why are we nervous? That can be a thing that happens. But if your horse spooks and you're in that rigid position, you're not able to mold your body with her. And if she goes left, you can't just like flow left with her. You're going to stay exactly where you are and fall off. So I think something that's really important to consider is just being loose. If you find when you're riding, your shoulder, elbow, and hand are like white knuckling, like you're so tight on the rein and you feel rigid in your body, just really try and take an awareness to like take a deep breath and relax all of that. And I know it can be really hard on a horse that gets speedy and goes faster and faster, but that's what half halts are for. So try and relax your body, and if the horse speeds up, you can maybe take an outside rein and half halt, like half halt up, stretch up through your core and keep your shoulders back and think up, like lift the horse's front end up, stretch down in your heel, not pushing them forward. I hate that stupid perpetuation that we're supposed to have our heels like as far down as humanly possible, and then they're like on the horse's shoulder. That's not good either. Just to have them slightly below level, so your calf is on and you just like feel really stable on the horse. It's something really good to practice. Standing still, like get in a really comfortable position, not where your back is super arched and you're super tight and tense and trying to fit this position, but somewhere that feels like really comfortable and strong for you. And that's again something that is much clearer to figure out when you're trotting on the lunge line and you have somebody helping the horse for you, and then you can really focus on your equitation. And maybe you need to switch horses for a little while, see if there's another lesson horse that you can ride that you don't have to think about all these different variables with the speeding up, the slowing down, all of that, and you can really focus on making your equitation as solid as possible. But yeah, so understandably you'd be nervous if you're falling off. That's scary. That's no fun. But do what you can at home with those exercises to increase your strength, and then you'll feel a little bit more capable. Sorry, I just moved my table. Feel a little bit more capable at handling those situations because you'll know that you're strong enough to. But then you just have to figure out the technique. But I hate that your trainer's like, you have bad balance in a bad seat. I hope that she's not actually saying that, because that would suck, and I would maybe invest in a new trainer. But yeah, I think it might also be worth, there are tons of books on like Amazon about biomechanics of riding and how to work on your posture and your seat, thinking about your pelvis as like a tripod. You have 3 points of contact when you sit, and just sitting really balanced. It might also be worth trying to learn how to sit the trot. I had an instructor tell me once that sitting the trot is like adjusting your pelvis to the horse's back, kind of like a puzzle piece. Like, you know those child's toys that have like a square hole, and you have to fit the square in the square hole, not the circle? That's kind of what riding a sitting trot is like. You have to fit your seat and your pelvis to the horse's moving, changing back the whole time. So just really being aware that the horse changes, and you have to be ready at any moment to adapt to that, so you keep the rhythm and you keep the harmony and the flow, and you're not fighting against them. So I hope I helped at some point. I'm sorry, I'm not the best at articulating that without like seeing it happen in front of me. Okay, on to the third question here. Anonymous listener asks, I have had my Mini for just over 4 years. He and my other horses are on pasture 24/7, and he's flourished in so many ways since joining my family. This summer, however, he's showing signs of founder. It's terrifying and frustrating, and I'm finding it extremely difficult not to be infuriated and frustrated at myself for not catching it sooner. Looking back, I can see small things off in the past week, like less running and playing, faster hoof deterioration. My main question is, how do you cope with anger and guilt associated with your horse being hurt or in pain? In this case, I would say you cope with it by realizing that hindsight bias is a thing. It's the same thing that happened with me and Zoe and her hocks and kissing spine and ulcers and my training methods and all of those things. I'm like, I suck so bad. How did I not see any of that? But it's hindsight bias. It's so obvious when you look back. Of course, you're like, oh, I knew that the whole time. No, you didn't. You had no idea. All you could do was do the best you could with the information that you did. And it sounds like you figured it out. You took all of those little pieces of information and put them together and were like, this is the problem, and you identified the issue. And that can be really, really hard to do. It took me years with Zoe. I've been working with this horse for 6 years, and it took me that long. So don't beat yourself up too much. I know it's so angering. It makes you feel so guilty, especially me with my training methods. I've been so harsh on horses, like so harsh. It's not the stuff that you see online, and it eats me up inside, because I'm like, how on earth have I been believing this bullshit that, you know, I just need to boss my horse around and then he'll love me? Like, no, no, that's not how that works. So I totally feel you there. It's really hard, but you have to realize it's not your pain, of course, or it's not your fault. It's going to seem so obvious in hindsight, but I mean, you're not a fortune teller. You can't know everything. All you can do is the best with what you know. And when you know better, you can do better. So furthering your email, I'm very upset with myself for letting it happen. I brought up concerns over his weight / grass consumption with my vet earlier this year and asked if he should wear a grazing muzzle. The vet told me he was a bit hefty but fine, and that grazing muzzles are cruel. This combined with the fact that he doesn't eat grain and hasn't shown any issues while I've had him, lulled me into a false sense of security. I totally feel you on that one. I know how frustrating it is. Oh God, my vet is very much like that, where it's just like, you have to ask, like, is it this? And they're like, nope. And you're like, okay, but what about this? And they're like, oh yeah, it's that for sure. And I'm like, why didn't you say that? Like, God, it's so frustrating. I feel you. Okay. He hates being in a stall and is used to having free roam on the pasture, and it breaks my heart. Tiny follow-up question. Any ideas how to make a stay in horse prison a little more enjoyable? I put his buddy in a stall with him a few hours a day and soak hay for him to munch on. So maybe something that could help with that, if he's not too sore, is trying to establish an exercise program. The simplest solution is to lunge and establish lunging. I said that twice, so sorry, don't know why. But an exercise program can really help with a weight problem, especially on such a small horse. I know I hate dry lots, and I hate like the stalling thing. I totally feel you, but the quickest solution is to get him to a healthy weight, and then try and help him maintain that. And if you're working with positive reinforcement, you can always use scratches instead. If the horse just finds where a spot that he really likes it, and you can still train with that. Like, that's what I'm doing with all our baby horses. But I understand it's so frustrating to help keep the weight off, but try not to beat yourself up too much. And I would work, like, if he has to be stuck in a stall to help with his weight, I would really work with scratches. And you can teach him targeting, you can teach him how to smile, you can teach him tricks like lifting his legs, or how to move in a circle around you. A lot of those things are a lot easier to do in stalls when you have a really small horse. So you can teach him to do a bunch of things to keep him entertained and interested. You can work on a few sessions a day if you are able. So I hope that helps. Try not to beat yourself up too much. It's an impossible situation. There's no way you could have known, and now you do. You did it. That's half the work, is identifying the problem. So hope that helps. Okay, I have lost count, but we are on to our next question. This one is short. No guarantees that my answer will be. Anonymous listener writes, I have a horse who I recently started to lease. He has great ground manners, and the only thing he struggles with is fly spray and anything spraying out of a bottle in general. When I try to spray something like fly spray on him, he gets very anxious, won't stand still, anxiously walks around you and tries to avoid whatever I'm spraying on him, and then he just kind of balls up and releases that very anxious energy. Some background on him: my trainer rescued him from a kill pen, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Do you have any tips on how I can get him to not be so anxious and to stand still while I'm spraying something on him? Yes, I do. Actually, I have a direct freaking answer for this one, for once. You guys like to ask me the hardest questions, and I'm like really pulling from training philosophy and like things I've seen, etc. But on this one, I actually have firsthand experience, finally. Okay, Zoe, just like this. She would dance around on the cross ties. She would run away from me if she was in her stall or in her pasture. Hated fly spray. Now she stands at liberty in the pasture for it. Still not the biggest fan, but she'll tolerate it. So I don't know if the kill pin has anything to do with it or not. Fly spray is rarely used as a weapon, so it's kind of hard to imagine that, but I mean, he could just be afraid of new things in general due to that experience, perhaps, or he's never experienced fly spray before. That's also a very high possibility. So like with our baby horses, they're afraid of it, but what you have to do is systematic desensitization. So this is the kind of thing that I have done with all of our horses. What I did with Zoe, for girthing issues or brushing issues, you just have to work up to it. So what I would recommend doing is if you have your horse in the cross ties or they're out in their field, just work with them, get them comfortable, do something easy like targeting or something, and, kind of like get their attention, focusing on like, hey, we're training, okay? So pay attention. That sounds really like militant, but just so at least for Zoe, it's helpful because she knows there's a difference between like when I'm just like out with her and when I'm asking something of her. So when I'm asking something of her, when we're like training with positive reinforcement, she knows to offer behaviors and to try something, to pay attention for cues and stuff like that. And that's what I mean. So for her, it was pretty easy. She was just standing in the cross ties, and I noticed there was a lot of flies on her, and there were a lot of flies on her, subject verb agreement. And then I got out the fly spray, and what I did with her, she's been trained for me to stand still in the cross ties and to just kind of hang out, be comfortable, etc. Oops, I'm trying to get my laptop plugged back in. So it works in the cross ties or out in the field. If your horse is super anxious, I wouldn't really recommend doing it in the cross ties because you don't want them to scare themselves or associate it with the cross ties or anything like that. So maybe let's see if we're working in a field or in a stall. Then what I would do is like give the horse something to do that they're really good at, and give them lots of scratchies, lots of cookies. Zoe's favorite trick to do is to smile, and her new favorite one is to go sideways. So I would maybe cue her to do one of those things, something that she's really comfortable and really good at, and just get her thinking this is positive. And then I would have the fly spray bottle out and just like, keep doing it with maybe the fly spray bottle in my hand. And then what I would do is I would just like step away from her and squirt it as far away as possible, just like a little bit, not like the full like everything, but just maybe like get it to squirt a little bit. So there's the smell, there's the action of it squirting, all that good stuff, so that it's away from her but still in our bubble, And then I'd click and treat for her standing and looking at it or whatever. And then I'd gradually bring it closer. And then if I'm going to do it to its full power, maybe hold my arm out all the way out again, spray it really far away from her, treat her for standing, and then gradually bring it close, maybe spray it on myself or spray it like in the general vicinity. And then when you work up towards spraying it to them, I would spray it like on the ground, like right beside them first, click and treat for standing still. And if the horse is moving away at any point, you need to back up a step. So keep spraying it really far away. I know it sounds wasteful fly spray, but I promise it's worth it. And then gradually you can spray it at their hooves, click and treat, click and treat, click and treat. It's a very good thing. The key here is to associate a really positive experience for the horse with the fly spray. And so then you can gradually spray and move up their leg and then eventually work up to every part in their body. Sometimes it's going to be different. They may swing their haunches away. You just know you need to back up, spray their barrel and their shoulders, wherever they were last comfortable with it. And on the haunches, you may have to start at the feet again and gradually work your way up. And it may take a few sessions. You might not get it all done in one, but it's important to go at the horse's speed. You don't want to just force it, because you're going to create more anxiety, because the horse is going to be like, oh my God, I can't get away from this terrifying thing. So just really pay attention to that, and hopefully that will help you. Okay, next one. Listener Maya writes, my horse was just diagnosed with navicular. She's a 10-year-old appendix mare, and I ride her competitively in dressage first level and some second level. The vet recommended corrective shoeing, which I agree with, but she also recommended Osphos, which is a shot, and it's an anti-inflammatory. Another thing she recommended was getting injections in her coffin bones. It sounds painful, and I don't totally agree with it, and it sounds invasive, and I'd rather just be able to be ridden a little bit, not hard, rather than hard now and never be able to ridden again if it becomes severe. I'm not sure if you had an opinion on this, or if you had any ideas for exercises that could help. I absolutely do. Oh my God, I love questions that I haven't answered to. It makes me so excited, because I'm like, yes, I can answer this. I don't get to just be like, well, I don't fucking know. But okay, so really exciting. I actually know of a supplement that is incredibly helpful with this sort of thing. It's called Equibone. I just put Zoe on it recently to hopefully help with kissing spine, hock issues. But we had a young horse named Ben, and Sonny rescued him and his mom from a kill pen and brought them here. And Ben was so malnourished in the womb. They were both super, super underweight when we got them. He was so malnourished under the womb, he didn't grow a stifle. It was barely a stifle. And he had no bone deterioration, and both of our vets told us to put him down. And Sonny did some research and some digging and was like, I don't know what to do. I rescued him. I don't want to give up on him. I don't want to just put him down. Because, he's only 6 months old. And so she was like, okay, I'm going to try this thing. And she put him on Equibone, and he grew oh my God, buried the lead. He grew a whole ass stifle, like a whole stifle, grew it. And it's because what Equibone does is it gives the body, because I gotta back up a little bit. They'll be able to explain it better at the place. I've talked to them before, but what it does is the body usually has a baseline level of the nutrients it needs, but it doesn't always have all of the nutrients and all of the vitamins. From my very basic understanding, I'm trying to explain this, but it doesn't have everything it needs to build where it was deficient. So though he was getting really good food, it still wasn't enough to help him build a stifle. The body knows what to do when it has those nutrients, and it could rebuild that stifle, especially since he was so young. But it didn't have what it needed out of his diet and out of his previous body growthness. So once he had the little bit of surplus, not only was it enough to maintain, but it was enough to rebuild. Another experience with Equibone was Ruler. He was a racehorse, won a lot of money, came off the track, and he had some bone, oh God, what did they call that? Oh God, I forgot what they were called. They're it sounds like meteorites. It's osteophytes. That might be it, actually. Surrounding his fetlock. So he had like little meteors of bone just floating around in his fetlock joint. So what it did when we put him on the EquiBone was his body then had the capability to break down that calcium that was in the wrong part of his body and put it back where it needed to go and just dissolved it. And there was no surgery needed. We didn't need to like take any of that out. His body did what it was supposed to. So that's 2 instances, one rebuilding and one taking away. Something I highly recommend doing before you just like go buy this product, because it is not cheap. But I'm sure it would save you a lot of money in the long run rather than overdoing injections. But what I would recommend is calling them. The website is TLC, like Tender Love and Care, TLC, Animal Nutrition. And when you call, I got Claire on the phone. Incredible lady. I was like, hi, I'm a dumbass. I don't know what any of this does. Can you explain it to me? And she explained everything so well. It all made perfect sense to me. I was like, I get why the product works. They dedicate themselves to studying the horse's body and just, oh my God, such intelligent people. And it's not one of those products where they're just like, oh my God, yeah, it'll fix a horse's hoof in days. Now, I'm not saying to not do OSFOS or any injections or anything. I mean, listen to your vet. But it might be worth trying this before or maybe in conjunction with. I do know several people that have tried OSFOS, and it either provides short-term results or none at all and doesn't actually end up helping the horse. But the reason that my boss found out about EquiBone is because a very close friend of her had an Appaloosa gelding named Lakota, and he foundered bad and had navicular, and she just was absolutely, I'm not putting him down. And all of her vets, she got so many different opinions, and they were all like, you need to put him down, until she found EquiBone, and now the horse is rideable. So don't take my word for it. Call the people, tlcanimalnutrition.com, and look at EquiBone. Call them, talk to them about it. They are more than happy to help educate you about these products. They have other products that can be used in conjunction. It's not cheap, but it is so worth it, especially like you said, and I highly respect you for not wanting to just like be able to ride your horse now and then not later. It's so much more worthwhile to have your horse that is at least pasture sound and not ride them until they're not ever going to be pasture sound, at least, you know. I would be so much happier to have Zoe be sound for light work rather than, me fix it now and then her never be sound in the future, you know. So I hope that helps. I don't really have any exercises, but absolutely corrective shoeing can help. But also giving the body what it needs to help kind of reverse that navicular. I have faith in EquiBone. You can let me know what you think. But 10 years old is too young to be, just shooting your horse up with a ton of things or considering retirement or putting her down. I think that this might really be a good solution. While I am not a vet and I cannot tell you what to do with your horse or make any guarantees, I really have faith in this product, and I'm excited to see what it can do for Zoe. So I hope that it will be beneficial for you as well. Fingers crossed. Let me know how it goes also. Okay. I think, oh my God, I have 4 more questions here. I might have to do 2 more episodes this week. Okay, so I think I'm going to do 1 more question today, and then I'll try to get to some more later this week. Okay, so listener Jade says, the issue I'm having is that I currently live with my partner and his family, and they have an 11-year-old off-the-track thoroughbred gelding who I have been working with for about a year. I'm the only one who works with him, as the owner fell off last year and hasn't been back on since, and doesn't want her kids riding him either unless I'm leading them around. We have made some great progress in trick training in general, riding at the walk and trot, plus I'm gradually introducing jumping to him, but my issue is he doesn't exactly know what I'm asking for above a trot. If I ask him for more than a trot whilst riding, he'll just do a sort of gallop until he gets to a fence or gate, and if I ask while he is on the lunge line or in a round pen, he will throw his head around and canter/bolt for a few strides and then continues with a very fast trot. I would love to know some ways to work on this without stressing him out, as what it seems like to me, I want to get the vet out and maybe a chiro as well, but his owner won't let me and says he just needs consistent work instead of trying to rule out pain. Okay, first of all, that's super frustrating and annoying and makes me lose a little bit of faith in some people. I so wish our industry would be like, Would you want to be ridden through pain? No? Okay, cool. Let's not do that to the horses either. But fine. Something that has been really beneficial for me, especially in Zoe's rehab, is a book called 55 Corrective Exercises for Horses. I forget who it's by, but it's on Amazon. I don't think it's that expensive. I think it's like $20. I could be totally wrong, but it wasn't that expensive because I bought it. But it has a bunch of awesome exercises for stuff like this. Because so often when we're riding, we only think about what they call the gymnastic muscles, the ones that are used to move and all of that, but we don't think about like fascia, neurological tendencies, and habits and stuff like that get embedded in our horses' brains, and it makes it very difficult for them to be able to do the things that we ask. So these exercises are sort of like neurocorrective exercises that help the horse concentrate, because what this sounds like to me is a horse that is green and has like inexperience with having a rider under saddle, also off the track. Where is the canter? In some training instances, some race programs have them canter, but not a ton. But anyway, what I would say is that the horse probably just doesn't have the strength and the balance, and it's a little uncomfortable. So especially if he's galloping around at the lunge or on the lunge, I would say that he probably needs to experience some top line building exercises. Cantering is very difficult for horses, especially because if they're not going super fast, they need to be loading and lifting through their core, balancing on their hind end and lifting that front end. Otherwise, they just go faster and faster and faster, which is what you're experiencing. So to help the horse build a top line, that can all be done at the walk and the trot and on the lunge, pull work, exercises, using hills and stuff like that, which is all in that book. And I recommend using that because I'm not going to sit here and list every exercise in that book, nor do I know them all. But that's super helpful. But what I would really do is sit the owner down privately and just be like, hey, I really want to have a conversation with you about this, because I think we might get this horse to a safe place where you would be able to ride as well as your children, and we don't need to be afraid of him if we can work through these issues, you know. I think that there might be an issue that is preventing him from being able to do what we're asking, and I would really like to not ask him to do things if it's causing him pain and just forcing him to work through it. I don't think that's very ethical, and I think that you wouldn't think that either. You know, don't point fingers or be like, I think it's not ethical and you are trying to hurt this horse. But like, you know, in a way that you're like, you know, I know that we're both wanting the best for this horse. I understand that it's expensive. Maybe you can offer to pay for it. You know, just be like, well, let's see if we can help this horse out and make him safe for everybody and help him understand what we're asking and make sure we're not unfairly compromising him or exploiting him, making this a really uncomfortable experience for him. So those are some things to consider. Okay, I'm just gonna label these unanswered so that I can get to them. Anyway, oh my god, my voice is like all the way shot. Anyway, I have some homework to attend to and a pizza calling my name. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up here at an hour, and I am promising you bonus episodes so that I make sure that I do it this week. I really want to be able to get to that because my horse is getting very expensive very quickly with her chiropractor and all that good stuff for kissing spine treatment. So I would really like to, you know, be making some more money, and I also want to answer you guys' questions. And my podcast is my favorite and easiest thing that I can do. So yeah, I'm hoping that I'm helping you guys. Thank you so much for all of the support, writing in, answering questions or asking questions, and yeah, also, if you have any experience with some things that I was like, I don't really know about, you feel free to write me an email and I'll pass it along. Make sure you send it to jetreelpodcast@gmail.com. But beyond that, be sure to check us out at JETEquiTheory. Oh my god, Jet Reel Podcast on Instagram, and also JETEquiTheory if you'd like. But beyond that, I will catch you guys later this week and then next Tuesday. Thanks for listening.